like that, and
Having a heat.
yeah,
Yeah, oh, yeah. It's like,
I didn't say that.
That was me.
Of course, like,
Okay.
Stop him dead in his tracks.
He's always giving me a hard time.
Ooh,
Who?
I could never give you the
Mm.
taking the grandkids down at 1 o'clock.
Gotta
and
get
there was
out
a
in the
line.
rain.
Door 7, please. And Bravo 3. Bravo 1 as well.
Bravo 1.
Recording in progress.
Okay, I got 5:30, so we're going to start the meeting. Welcome, everybody, to the June 27th, 2022 regular city council meeting. And I will ask the city clerk to please call the roll.
Forgot to move the mic. Rod Runyon,
Here.
Tim McLaughlin,
I'm here.
Darcy Long,
Here.
Scott Randall,
Here.
Dan Richardson.
Here.
I'm here too. Okay, I'd like to ask Councilor Scott Randall to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilor Randall. Item 4 is approval of the agenda. We do have 2 amendments to the agenda. First in the presentations, we have a special presentation by our police chief who will be up shortly. And we also have items 10C and D added to the end of action items section of the amendment of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I'll move to approve the agenda as amended.
And I'll go ahead and second.
It's been moved by Counselor Richardson and seconded by Counselor McLaughlin to approve the agenda as amended. Is there any discussion or questions? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Motion passes unanimously. Item 5 is presentations. I'd like to call on Chief Tom Worthy to please step forward. Does that come out?
How about now?
Sure.
Thank you. Mayor Mays, members of the council, and folks joining us today. From time to time, it's my great pleasure to honor and recognize our staff at the City of the Dalles Police Department for those acts and endeavors that really go beyond the call of duty and show what our approach to community policing is every day here. And in today, I'm fortunate to honor Sergeant Doug Kramer. Doug, if you could join me up here, please. For his extraordinary acts on the day of June 2nd, we're here to present him with a life-saving award. And in my mind, that's one of the highest honors that you can receive as a police officer, because every one of us comes into this job looking to help people and save lives. And in this incident, there's absolutely no doubt that that's what occurred with Sergeant Kramer on this date. So I'd like to read the letter of commendation that goes with his award, if you mind. And I'll read it word for word, as these are the events that led to this event. Doug, on June 2nd, 2022, just after noon, Sergeant Kramer responded to a report of an overdose on East 9th Street. Sergeant Kramer responded to the location and quickly entered the residence and saw a woman attempting to provide CPR to an unresponsive male adult. The victim's face was turning purple. And there was burnt tinfoil laying at the fingers of the male subject, which was indicative of drug use. Sergeant Kramer recognized these indicators of a drug overdose and that the victim's life was in grave peril. Sergeant Kramer is trained in the use of Narcan and carries Narcan on his person, as do all officers of the Dalles Police Department. And Sergeant Kramer quickly administered 1 dose of Narcan to the unresponsive male, and immediately the male subject took a deep breath, began to breathe. Medical personnel arrived on scene and assisted Sergeant Kramer with removing the male subject from the bathroom that he was in. And as they were caring for the subject, Sergeant Kramer saw that his eyes began to flutter and his hands began to move. The male subject looked panicked and shocked, and Sergeant Kramer calmed him down and explained what had happened and continued to assist the victim until his care was transferred to medical personnel. Sergeant Kramer is receiving this life-saving award based on his actions taken on June 2nd, 2022. And if it were not for the quick actions and efforts of Sergeant Kramer, it's possible that this could have been a fatal overdose of fentanyl. For those actions, I'm proud to award you the City of the Dalles Police Department Life-Saving Award.
That's Alpha 3. There's more.
Sergeant, before you get away, I assume you've brought members of your family here. Would you like to introduce them?
Yes, my wife Autumn here. My son, Ben, Claire, and my son Sam is there.
Very good. You guys got a lot to be proud of. Thank you very much. Nice job. Thank you, Chief.
There. Nothing around the control room.
Okay. Item 6, audience participation. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on any subject which does not later appear on the agenda. Up to 5 minutes per person will be allowed. Citizens are encouraged to ask questions with the understanding that the city can either answer the question tonight or refer that question to the appropriate staff member who will get back to you within a reasonable amount of time. If a response by the city is requested, the speaker will be referred to the city manager for further action. The issue may appear on a future meeting agenda for city council consideration. Is there anyone in the audience or on Zoom who would like to address the city council for up to 5 minutes on any subject which is not on our agenda? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, last call. Okay, we'll move on. Thank you very much. Item 7 is city manager's report. Mr. Klebs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few items for you this evening. Just wanted to let you know that I've given presentations to the Rotary Civic Club, and I'm working to get on the schedule for the Lions Club, Kiwanis, and Governmental Affairs. I had an excellent ride along with Officer Kramer last week in the police department, and I intend to do those ride alongs on an annual basis and have that exposure and experience with our police department. I attended the airport board meeting. That was the first one that I was able to get to. It meets early in the morning around 7 a.m. And so during the summer season, when my wife is off as a teacher, I can make those meetings rather than doing daycare drop off. But I'll endeavor to continue to do those over the course of the summer and stay in touch there. Had an excellent meeting with the Dalles Main Street. We talked mainly about the parklet program that they are spinning up, as well as the ongoing partnership and expectations that we have with one another, as well as a recurring touch base with the Chamber of Commerce. I went to the Mid-Columbia Housing Summit, and we also received our underground utility feasibility report. And so we have that under review and process. And so some more to come from that and potential next steps. The community outreach team, we met last week, and there is an intention to take a trip back to DC in September. We brainstormed a list of potential projects and policies and issues that we could bring back to our different representatives in DC, and feel that there is enough on the list to worthy a trip. And so that's everything. Jotted down a few items from the Kramer Field Sports Complex Hospital joint projects, or several projects there. Along with the Brownfield program, Q Life, Resolution Center, Search and Rescue. There's a lot to talk about. I wanted to mention that the Dog River groundbreaking is tentatively scheduled for July 18th in the morning, I believe. And so we wanted to poll and see your availability for that trip so we can organize accordingly. And so I don't know if we want to take a quick moment and do that now for Dave in the audience so we can coordinate. Dave?
For those of you that didn't hear that, Mr. Anderson suggested that the city council decide on whether a morning or afternoon is best. There was a previous email sent out on this, and I know I responded to it, and I suggested the morning only because on July 18th, that could be the possibility of some weather like we got today. So perhaps the morning would be better, but I'm very open-minded. So how do the rest of you feel? July 18th, morning, afternoon, is that a good day for you guys?
I also said morning.
Same.
Good morning.
It doesn't matter. I currently have a conflict that I'm trying to reschedule.
But not 7 a.m. in the morning.
No, let the record show that Councilor McLaughlin likes to sleep in and would like to have it at 9 o'clock or later. Is that right, Councilor?
That's great.
Great. And I'm with you on that, by the way. Okay, is that enough direction you have, Mr. Anderson? Mr. Runyon, you okay with July 18th in the morning?
As far as I know.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
And then the last item I had is I mentioned that my last city manager's report, I was able to meet and spend some time with the city manager in Hood River, Abigail. Also was able to get in contact with the city manager in Stevenson. And there's a new city manager coming in Goldendale, I believe, and Cascade Locks is continuing their recruitment for theirs. So we had some interesting conversation about organizing kind of a smaller group of city managers in the Gorge, and having that network and professional contacts in the area might be really helpful. So other than that, that's my report.
Great. Sounds like you're very busy, and that's good. Okay, we'll start with Councilor McLaughlin.
Well, I've been having ongoing meetings with constituents
and attended the airport meeting last week along with our manager and brought up to speed on new occurrences at the airport. Things are going very well, thank you. And it's growing. Desire for more hangars. The DNR just sent in the fire bosses are there soon, 2 of them today. So that's good news for fire protection in our region. So that's my report.
Thank you, Councilor McLaughlin. Councilor Long.
Yes, so on June 15th, I attended the traffic safety meeting via Zoom, and they are starting to resume in-person meetings. And then urban renewal was canceled for this month, but we will be having a meeting next month. And then I just have one question about cooling centers for our homeless. I saw an email come out that we were going to be having them pending volunteers. And then I had a couple of people contact me today asking if that was available, and I wasn't sure.
There is a meeting on Wednesday with St. Vincent de Paul and some church pastors and our city manager and Mid-Columbia Community Action to get more volunteers. But my understanding is the policy will be that this will be run by Mid-Columbia Community Action and at a St. Vincent de Paul facility. And the policy is that the temperature would have to be 100 degrees for 2 days in a row to open the facility. I've been out of town a little bit lately, but that's what I know so far.
Affirmative.
Okay, so that seems pretty high. I mean, I understand if we're having a shortage of volunteers, but I mean, I could see that this could be physically dangerous to people, even if we don't hit 100 2 days in a row, as hot as it's been.
I think we'll get to that on Wednesday, and I tend to agree that 100 does sound a little high. So I think this will not only we'll narrow that policy down further, and also hopefully come away with some more volunteers, which I'm optimistic about because the COVID restrictions seem to be loosening up.
Okay, thank you for the update.
Thank you.
If I may, I'll also add that I shared an email from the Mid-Columbia Community Action Council earlier today. They may not be operating the cooling center based on those requirements the mayor mentioned a moment ago, but they've been placing some cooling and hydration supplies both today and yesterday down at the pallet shelters on the Bargeway Road to assist. So some of that information is in the email I forwarded this morning.
Okay, I didn't see that this morning. And I'm
worries.
sorry, since I haven't looked at it, are people who are not living at the pallet shelter also able to get some water there, or only people who live there?
I believe it says serving houseless clients.
Okay.
So I don't believe it's only those who are at the pallet shelter.
Okay.
Not to put them on the spot, but I do see that Kenny LaPointe is on the stream as well, if he has additional information to add.
Mr. LaPointe, welcome. You're muted. There you go.
All right. Thanks for having me. I knew I came for a reason. Yes, supplies have been dropped off at the pallet shelter as well as St. Vincent de Paul in the Dalles. There's also locations in Hood River, but folks can stop by and get those supplies if they need them. And we also had outreach folks who were out and handing out supplies to folks as well on Friday. Before the weekend, we passed out water, sunscreen, Blistex, and then we'll also we've ordered some cooling neck wraps that will be able to go out in the future, but there's been supply chain issues. So getting that stuff in has been a little bit of a delay.
Thank you, Mr. LaPointe. Any more discussion on that issue? Okay, thank you. Is that the end of your report?
Yes.
Okay, Councilor Richardson.
I have nothing to report.
Councilor Randall.
Nothing to report.
As far as the mayor's report, on June 17th, I attended the annual Father's Day breakfast at the Springs Nursing Home. June 21st, I was on the KODL Coffee Break Show with Al Wynn. I also attended the Houseless Summit sponsored by the Mid-Columbia Community Action with the city manager. On the 24th, I attended the aforementioned community outreach team meeting at the community college, and that concludes my report.
Mr. Mayor, a quick question, if I may. I believe there was a Houseless Summit last summer or perhaps early fall that was recorded. Do you know if this recent one had recordings or if there was a Zoom recording or
Well,
something.
another question for Mr. Lapointe. Mr. Lapointe, do you know if the summit on Wednesday was recorded?
No, unfortunately, we weren't able to record it because we didn't have the technology and the facility to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have slides and presentations that will be going out in the next couple of weeks, so we can make sure that folks have access to the materials that were presented.
If someone would like to get access to those materials, would it be fair for them to email you and you could make sure they get a copy?
Absolutely.
Yep, thank you. Okay, item 9 is the consent agenda. Items of a
Mr.
routine.
Mayor,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilor Randall.
you forgot Councilor Runyon for his report.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Runyon, I'm sorry about that.
Out of the room, out of mind. Really just one thing, other than a few citizen phone calls regarding crime and so forth in the down corridor. The one city that I attended was the Q Life meeting, and our new city manager can correct me if I'm wrong, but the project that was presented to us, a survey done by, actually funded by the Google Community Affairs Division, which sounds really cool, about Q Life extending our services, which is our mission about the county. And we're talking about all communities in the county. The report showed strategic financing, cost per mile, includes the entire county. It's just a real interesting report that Q Life is going to really continue to expand its services, much like we've done in the Maupin area, to all the other outlying community areas in Wasco County. So I think there's a lot of good things ahead of Q Life between the city and the county partnership.
Commissioner Runyon is correct, and thank you for reminding me that that is also one of the other hats I wear that I slipped right across in my report. You are correct that we had that report at the Q Life board meeting last week, and it's my intention to come to City Council to present both on that report and the strategic plan that Q Life recently adopted with our chair of the board, Lean Weinstein, at a future meeting. So more to come on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Runyon. Okay, item 9 is the consent agenda. Items of a routine and non-controversial nature are placed on the consent agenda to allow the city council to spend its time and energy on more important items and issues. Any councilor may request an item be pulled from the consent agenda and be considered separately. Items pulled from the consent agenda will be placed on the agenda at the end of the action items section. Tonight, we have 4 items on the consent agenda. First, approval of the June 13th regular city council minutes. Second is authorizing an amendment for the operations contract for our wastewater treatment plant with Jacobs. Third, a resolution concurring with my appointment of a joint ad hoc committee regarding climate resiliency for the city and the county. And fourth is a resolution authorizing a Mid-Columbia Community Action grant application. Is there a motion to accept or adopt the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move to adopt the consent agenda.
Thank you, Counselor.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Counselor Randall and seconded by Counselor Long to adopt the consent agenda. Is there any discussion or questions? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 10A, workers' compensation renewal of the city's workers' compensation policy. Well, looks like we're going to be double teamed here. We'll leave it to Daniel to introduce Ms. Wimber.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of council. Seated with me is Brianna Wimmer with Stratton Insurance Agency here in the Dalles. Stratton Insurance is our agent of record for our workers' comp insurance and believe The plan is to have them also do our property general liability and auto insurance. Brianna has been excellent to work with on our workers' comp and very knowledgeable about the insurance industry in itself and in particular workers' comp. So this year's renewal is pretty much status quo as to what last year's was. There's not a significant change, although our experience rating went up slightly and that's due to claim changes in 1 year versus the year that dropped off. The way the experience rating works is the current year that we're in will be effective next year for next year's rating because there's not enough time in the year for them to calculate what effect that has on our premium for this year. It will be included next year, and by that time, the last year on this year's 3-year look back will drop off. And so we do anticipate next year's being significantly lower than what this year's is. But it did go up slightly this year. With that, I will turn it over to Brianna.
Well, thank you. So I will echo what Daniel just indicated, although he indicated that your work comp is status quo. That status quo is phenomenal. Your guys' City of the Dalles mod factor is well below what they consider average. So you guys are performing at a very good pace. That means we're getting employees, directors, managers home safe to their families each night, which is very commendable for City of the Dalles to do. I enjoy the work that I do with Daniel and Bailey, is who I work most closely with right now. The SAFE did assign a dividend last year. That is something that is special to SAFE. They don't always guarantee a dividend, but City of the Dalles did receive a dividend last year in the amount of $44,082, which is very nice. That dividend is based on your premium. So we have been lowering that premium each year, which is good, because that means that that we've got more money for other fun projects. But that dividend is not, we can't always expect it, but we hope that SAFE will present another dividend in 2022-23 year. So that is great. The mod factor going from 0.73 to 0.80, as Daniel indicated, it did jump just a tad bit, but nothing alarming or to worry about that we felt. Can I answer any questions about the 2022-23 workers' compensation renewal?
Any questions for Mr. Hunter or Ms. Wimber? You know, every year it seems we get such good news on this, and we often give credit where credit is due to Daniel and to yourself for all the great work you guys are doing to save us so much money. I don't think anybody has really mentioned or recognized Bailey as being a key part of this. Daniel, can you say a few words about Bailey?
He's received plenty of accolades. Bailey has done a fantastic job since he started almost 4 years ago. And probably the biggest prop for him is he's so detail oriented. When he's drafting a policy that's going to address some safety concern that we have, it takes a lot of work on my part to just get him to pull back on the reins, to not get so far into the weeds on the details of what's required and why we're doing this and why we're doing that and what's needed for the city and for employees to do. That getting him into that mindset, just because he's so detail oriented and he wants to provide all the facts to all the employees, and he wants to do that through the policy and give them the whys, which I appreciate. And yeah, he's done a fantastic job.
Maybe to properly recognize him, you could give us his last name and his job title.
His last name is Volk, that's Volk. And his job title is safety officer. And last year, I believe it was, he did receive employee recognition for, I'm not sure which one it was.
Yeah, it was one of the 3 categories.
Yeah, one of the 3 categories we have. But yeah, he's done a fantastic job.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Oh, we're looking for a motion, aren't we?
Preferably.
Anybody like to make a motion to approve our workers' compensation insurance?
I'll do. I will.
Counselor Richardson,
I would move to approve the city workers' compensation insurance for fiscal year 22-23 with SAFE and continue the city's partnership with Stratton Insurance as our agent of record for an amount not to exceed $90,036.41.
thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Moved by Counselor Richardson and seconded by Counselor Randall to approve the workers' compensation insurance for fiscal year 2022 and 23. Is there any more questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye or you raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the transfer of funds in our general fund. We have with us our finance director, Ms. Angie Wilson. Ms. Wilson.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of council. You have before you my agenda staff report regarding resolution number 22-23. This resolution is authorizing transfers of budgeted funds between the various departments of the general fund. This evening, I'd like to ask to amend the staff report and the resolution, and I'll get into that a little bit further, but the resolution would cover $120,000 from contingency line item of the general fund to cover the following items. As we go through the budget year, we always budget to, hope that we can budget the amount that's needed. This year, we're going to need to some additional funds in the line item for the legal department for the contractual services for extra expenses that have come up throughout the year. And then the other thing is the city of the Dalles receives transient room tax dollars on a monthly basis and funds the Northern Wasco County Parks and Rec District with a 25% revenue. They receive 25% of our revenues for that. This year, we estimated to receive this year, we are estimating that we are going to receive an additional $50,000 more that we would need to fund to them. And I'm asking this evening if we could do a transfer, a resolution over that, which would be $120,000 from contingency. That amended number would leave us with $474,953 in our contingency fund, which would roll over to next year's beginning fund balance. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Wilson?
I have one. With regard to the litigation expenses, can you or perhaps somebody speak just generally about the nature of those expenses?
So as Jonathan, are you okay with me speaking or? So as the year has progressed, we run into some litigation expenses with the airport with some water rights. We have also had some extra expenses in the airport finalization of closing out some of the litigation areas that we had there. We had some Google expenses also. Those expenses will be reimbursed to us, but as part of our budget and expense line item, it's exceeding the budget line item.
Thank you.
Just to add to the finance director's summary there, that's all absolutely correct. In addition to paying land use counsel for representing the city in the land use board of appeals and the recent litigation that the city was involved in there. That was a completely unanticipated expense that really was just, not truly foreseeable for budgeting purposes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? So the resolution itself has to be, the couple of numbers have to change in that, is that right?
That would be correct, yes.
Okay, so that, for example, the 50,000 number in the last column.
So it would, yes, that it would go to 50,000 in the last column, and I will do an updated resolution on that. And it would change the general fund contingency from using 85,000 to 120.
Any other questions or comments? Looking for a motion to approve the resolution as amended.
I'll make a motion.
Counselor Long,
I move to adopt resolution number 22-023 as amended, authorizing transfers of budgeted amounts between categories of various funds of the City of the Dalles budget, making appropriations and authorizing expenditures for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022.
thank you, Counselor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Counselor Long and seconded by Counselor Richardson to approve the resolution transferring monies in the general fund. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we come to that part of the agenda that has been amended with items 10C and 10D. And there'll be a resolution designating our city manager as the authority to execute a FEMA grant program for our airport, and also approval of a personal services contract for grant consulting. Mr. Renard.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, thank you. As the resolution states, we're presently in the second phase of a Oregon Emergency Management grant process. And one of the criteria for that grant is to have a designated agent for that grant process. And I felt that after talking with Jonathan and sorting this out, that Matthew or the city manager should be that person to be the designated agent for the City of the Dalles. I apologize, it's just new to me. My recommendation would be that we move to approve resolution 22-026 designating city manager for the City of the Dalles to authorize and execute the FEMA grant programs for the Columbia Gorge Regional Airport.
Any questions for Jeff?
I just wanted to sort of jump in if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely.
So this is, thank you very much, Jeff, for your report and for this resolution. This is a part of the Federal Emergency Management Agency's criteria for soliciting grant funding is sort of a ratification of the authority to pursue grant funding by the governing body of the public body, which is in this case, the City Council, who's responsible for the financial matters connected with the airport. And so this resolution that you're doing tonight, if there was any doubts or just questions about why is it here in this agenda for you all to review, it's essentially just another grant assurance, but it's just one that comes before any grants are given. And so by adopting this resolution, we would be including this in the application packet, which would authorize the airport to start exploring these additional monies from the federal government. That's all.
That was said much better than I did.
Could you talk into the microphone?
I say that was said much better than I did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions for Mr. Renard? Looking for a motion?
I'll make a stab at it. I move to approve resolution number 22-026, designating the city manager of the City of the Dalles to authorize and execute FEMA grant programs for the Columbia Gorge Regional Airport.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Been moved by Counselor McLaughlin and seconded by Counselor Long to approve the resolution designated our city manager as the authority to execute FEMA grant programs for our airport. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Counselor Runyon, I trust you were voting in approval, right? You raised your hand a little late. I wanted to make sure. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next is item 10B. Personal services contract for grant consulting services. Mr. Renard.
All right, the background on this is tied to this Oregon Emergency Management Grant that we just designated the city manager to be the authority on. My experience with writing grants is not, it's new to me. Excuse me. Thank you. I guess just do I read it?
So you're recommending we hire Mr. Nolan Young to,
Yes.
Yeah.
And if I may, I think some of the,
Apologize.
in particular with FEMA grants or CDBG grants or a lot of federal funding sources, they have both the application process and the management process can be incredibly complicated and challenging. And so bringing in some resources to assist with that application process who have some experience with it can be incredibly beneficial and help get those grant applications done in a timely manner. And make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, which is what federal grant funding sources really focus on. And oftentimes these grant opportunities come up with a very short window. And the airport manager is a staff of one. He has a lot on his plate. And so having some of these resources available will allow him to more efficiently and effectively apply for that funding source. I'll also add that this is an area that I'd like to explore a little bit further, not just associated with the airport, but with grant writing services for the city as a whole. I've worked with a company previously that I've had some good experiences with, and I'll be bringing them in to meet our leadership team and have a conversation about how and if it makes sense to have some of these grant writing services available to the city cross department, not just with the airport. But in this particular case, this PSA will be very helpful for this grant opportunity coming up.
thank you. Any questions or comments for Mr. Renard or Mr. Klebs?
I have one quick one that the board unanimously approved and supports this decision.
Counselor Richardson.
Just briefly, given passing familiarity with grants at various levels in my own workplace, I would like to just echo Matthew's comments that federal grants, FEMA grants can be significantly challenging to apply for and especially to manage. So this makes good sense to me, and it's a very modest investment for potentially very large returns. So I'm in favor.
Any other comments or questions? I just had one. I know Mr. Young. I think very highly of Mr. Young. I think he's very capable, and I know he's done a lot for the airport. I was just wondering if Mr. Klebs or you had given any consideration to any other firm, or whether, Matthew, you mentioned another firm that you weren't talking about Mr. Young's firm, I take it, the one you've worked with before. Is it?
No, that was a different company that I've worked with before. I think given the upcoming deadlines associated with this FEMA grant and the fact that Mr. Young is ready to rock and roll and assist Mr. Renard and has taken some preliminary steps to do so already, it would be timely to continue to work with Mr. Young, especially on this particular grant application. The company that I have worked with previously has a broad spectrum of experience with different federal funding sources. It'll take a little bit more time to get them up to speed and get them working on these grant opportunities.
Thank you. Any other questions? Looking for a motion.
Guess I'll finish this out. I move to approve the personal service agreement with Nolan Young for FEMA grant funding assistance.
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Counselor McLaughlin and seconded by Counselor Richardson to approve the personal services contract as described.
No, sir, it was seconded by Scott, but I would third the motion.
You seconded it?
I distracted.
Our city attorney was, okay. I'm sure I got that correctly. I'll go. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. I believe we've lost Mr. Runyon, so I guess it's a 4-0 vote. Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, the city of the Dalles will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602H to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. Representatives of the news, media, and designated staff shall be allowed to attend this executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the meeting. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on or otherwise disclose any of the deliberations or anything said about these subjects during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. Directly following the litigation executive session, the council will meet in executive session in accordance with ORS 192.6602D to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations. Representatives of the news media will not be allowed to attend the executive session concerning labor negotiations. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the meeting. So, Mr. Nichols, you can stay for the first part, and then we'll ask you to vacate the premises. Okay. So with that, okay, we're going to close this and open a new Zoom meeting for the benefit of Mr. Runyon and anybody on the news media who sticks around. So with that, we'll record.